Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. I had no intention of watching The Flash, the 2023 film, based on a lot of stuff that I read about. I think we may have actually talked about on the show a while back, but this is a movie that has been in a very troubled production for something like 8 or 9 years. And on top of everything else going on with it, the Snyderverse was basically erased when James Gunn came in a couple of years ago, which made this movie obsolete before it was even released. Ezra Miller, the star, has had all kinds of legal problems that caused some people to think that The Flash might share Batgirl's fate and just be shelved entirely. But probably because of how much money there was in this movie and how long it's been around, it was in fact released. And when it first came out, there were really rave reviews about it, and then those seemed to evaporate because they were likely mostly marketing-driven type reviews. And at that point, I kind of wrote off and said, yeah, I'll probably never watch this movie. It doesn't matter, and I don't really care, because I didn't like the Flash the way the character was depicted in the Justice League, and I just assumed, okay, this is going to be more of that, except in a movie that doesn't even seem to know what it wants to be or have a purpose. Then a fan of the show reached out with a link to watch the movie for me. Interestingly, this person did not provide any opinion on what they thought of the movie. And in fact, if you're listening, well, you probably are, I would be curious whether you liked it or not, because it was very simply a very short message that said, hey, Joe, if you'd like to watch The Flash, click this link and you can watch it. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to turn down a free link to watch a movie. I don't know what the background of it or whatever is. I mean, it's clearly not an American copy of it, I can tell you that, but it was a good copy in English, so I thought, okay, I'll watch it. And watching it, and having finished it, it is an interesting movie in that it is both better than I expected it to be at times, and far worse. Which is normally, it's a very, I've used this term before, usually with B-movies or troubled or low-budget films, where I say it's a 50-50 type of movie, where there's things that are really good and things that are really bad. And that's exactly what The Flash is. The scenes where there's no CGI fights, where there's no action set pieces, with one exception, where there's nothing outside of people in a room talking to each other, those scenes are really good. There's actually, and Ezra Miller, for all the troubles outside of the film, does a much better job in this movie, I mean, light years better than Justice League. So I don't know what changed. And in fact, the movie actually even comments on it, because this isn't a spoiler because the trailer shows this. There's a point where there's two Flashes. There's two Barry Allens. And the younger one acts like the character was in Justice League, and the older one actively yells at him and criticizes him for being that way. So the movie itself acknowledges that there was a bad version of this character before. But those scenes where it's people in a room, physically, in reality, talking to each other and having dialogue, those scenes are really good. And then it goes into big action set pieces and almost universally becomes awful. And there's been some kind of defense of the CGI in this movie as being intentionally, I think the term they used was weird, which is, I guess, their replacement for bad. There is no way that I believe for a second that all of this was intentional. Now, some of it I'm sure was. The stuff with the, Speed Force, that kind of thing. There's no grounded reality version of that, so you can make it different and weird and comic booky. But some of the other stuff, no. There's no way this was on purpose. I have several theories. I'll get into them on Friday because I don't have enough time to talk about them in the next minute or so. But overall, it's a fascinating movie. I don't know that I can necessarily, I can't say it's a good movie, but I was continuously engaged with it, which I guess is better than I can say for a lot of other modern movies I've watched. So in that way, I do think it's an interesting film to experience. I don't know that anybody, I shouldn't say anybody, I don't think I'll ever rewatch it again unless it's in a highly fan-edited form, which this could actually work well in, depending. I'll talk again about this on Friday. I think there's some changes that would actually drastically improve the movie, in my opinion. As it is here, this 2-hour and change version of it, the full theatrical version as far as I understand, I would probably never watch this again because it's too long and a lot of the stuff that I feel like shouldn't be there is actually the worst stuff in the film. But if you're at all curious, I wouldn't say avoid it. I would say you might want to watch it at some point. Wait till it hits streaming in some way on something you don't have to pay for. It's an interesting movie. I'll get more to it on Friday, but the one thing I did not expect to say is that The Flash, for all its problems, it did interest me and it kept me engaged. Later.